Good morning, Roll Gang. Welcome on in to another episode of the Weekday Wake and Bake. It is Canon News Thursday today, so we are here to break down some cannabis and smoke it, and break down some of the latest and greatest in cannabis news from around the country. Welcome on in to another episode of the show where we go live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Some herb and talk about some pot. Yo, what's up, TD3? District Champ? What's up, my man? It's great to see you this morning here on the Wake and Bake. Anyways, let's officially get on into the show. I am your anchor man this morning, Processor Sky, here with 4 pretty solid nationwide news stories regarding the cannabis industry. Every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we start breaking down some herb and rolling it up with our handy dandy rolling spoon, cannabis multi-tool, and sponsor of the Weekday Wake and Bake morning show, the most efficient way to procure your canny bee and roll a dime every time. So today I have some unbelievable herb from Quality Vegas Bud, smoking way better than we normally do on the show. Huge shout out Quality Vegas Bud for the hook up, and let's get on into this show. Before I get into the news stories that I have procured for you guys this morning, I do have some news from Kentucky and even from Germany, you guys. But before I get on into it, I just wanted to say this show is brought to you by Oaksterdam University, my proud alumni and sponsor of the show, the first ever cannabis college and the best way to educate yourself on the industry and its beautiful plant that surrounds it. They really focus on like the science and the facts, or if you take the cannabis course, they go really into depth about what different facets of the industry exist. And the best thing is, you guys, y'all are eligible for 10% scholarship from the Rolling Spoon. So use promo code Rolling Spoon whenever you're checking out your tuition to take these cannabis courses and learn about some pot, you guys. Huge shout out Cali, Montana. Where are the giveaways? Got some Oaksterdam Kush Auto that I'm breeding. It's exclusive as fuck. And I'll send you some. Let's go. Yo, I gotta do some giveaways. And I definitely gotta get Cali, Montana involved here. Yo, shout out Cali, Montana for tapping in today. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into this roll and Anchorman mode. Anchorman Processor mode. Let's read off some of these unbelievable pieces of cannabis news from this, and I am super excited to do that with you, Roll Gang. I hope that you guys are having your wake and bake, rolling up something nice and fresh, and talk about some industry news. So first on the docket, this is the biggest story of the day, probably. House Federal Cannabis Legislation Bill. Nancy Mace. So this is the girl who is sponsoring the bill that would decriminalize cannabis and deschedule it as a Schedule I substance federally. And that's basically what we've been. Schedule I claims that cannabis has no medicinal value, which is a complete joke. And so Nancy Mace is the GOP House Representative that is supporting and sponsoring the bill to deschedule cannabis. So you can imagine that whenever she passed the bill and the bill was headed to Senate for vote, she did receive opposition. But I did not expect the opposition to be as brutal and honestly just egregious as it was. This girl named Katie Atkinson verbally attacked Nancy Mace for sponsoring this bill, calling her high and challenging her to take a drug test. So this girl, Katie Atkinson, is trying to veto the cannabis legislation bill federally and called the girl who is sponsoring it high over Nancy's stance wanting to legalize cannabis. Well, what happens is Katie Atkinson, the girl, the bitch who called Nancy high, got the bill to take a revote. So the opposition was successful enough to have the committee revote as to whether the federal legislation bill should be passed. And Nancy Mace won again. So she won the first time that the bill was taken to vote. But then this bitch called her a stoner, and they voted on it. But savage, shout out Nancy Mace for staying resilient, and people are gonna hate. Like, if you're doing the right thing, people are going to hate. But shit, I mean, I didn't think that she'd blatantly come out and this girl, Katie Atkinson, blatantly came out and called Nancy to take a drug test. You should show us that you're not stoned right now. Unbelievable. So there's always opposition. I think this country really wants to legalize cannabis. Nancy Mace had to go through the voting process for her bill twice, the bill that she sponsored, and shout out for Nancy Mace fighting through the opposition and getting the bill passed so that we can have cannabis legislation on the docket at the Senate. Are still on schedule for federal legislation. Thank you to Nancy Mace. So the next cannabis story here, coming from Kentucky. So Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear created a cannabis committee through an executive order to study and improve patients' ability to receive cannabis and purchase it fairly and evenly. So Andy Beshear, he is the governor of Kentucky, and he created this cannabis committee basically by swinging his governor you-know-what around and saying, this is an executive order. We are creating this committee. We need to be educated on this industry and learn how our patients can properly access their medication. There's no use in having legal cannabis commerce if you're not going to do it. Of Kentucky, Andy Beshear said, all right, we just got to do it. I'm creating an executive order to found this cannabis committee that will study all of the early functioning in Kentucky. I just love to see people at the highest level supporting the plant and the education of the plant, because we still don't know enough about it. And Kentucky really wants to medicate their people properly, and I don't blame them. So huge shout out Kentucky. You have a great governor, Andy Beshear. just doing what needs to be done to study our beautiful plant. So the next piece of cannabis news is coming from Germany. Yes, that's right, some German cannabis news. But before we do, wanted to read off some of the comments. We have cheers from Mikey420 Cannabis. Good morning from Cali420 Love. Yo, love Cali420 Love. Cali Montana says, tell her we got that magic pack, but other than that, not trying to talk. I feel that. And then Mercedington tapping in. Appreciate you, Mercedington. Mercedington was born in Germany, so huge piece of cannabis news on the docket for you. Mercedes, much love to you. And that sweater is giving me life, Sam, from Canna Planet. Yo, yes, Canna Planet. I'm wearing that towel hoodie. I appreciate you for noticing. But before we get on to this German cannabis news, I am smoking a Pearl. I got some quality Vegas bud, beautiful herb in here. I mean, the flavor is off the chain, but this joint rolled perfectly by my High Bud Tenders spoon, the official spoon of the High Bud Tenders podcast, my favorite podcast. Hosted by Cannabis Rocky and Jarrell. They were both on the Weekday Wake and Bake too. Roll a dime every time with the help of your rolling spoon. But anyways, German cannabis news. So, this is the first piece of German cannabis of the Weekday Wake and Bake. So, leaders of the Cannabis Coalition, which is a government-founded coalition in Germany, believe it or not, agree to legalize cannabis nationwide. The first hearings on this legislation are happening this week as Germany takes the first steps to become the next nation to legalize pot. And I'll be damned, yo. Germany is beating the United States to federal cannabis legislation. Let's go, Germany. Let's go. And you know, I personally, I grew up Jewish, you know, the whole stigmatized thing. They're open-minded and, you know, I love that they're legalizing pot, man. And that's a huge step for Germany. The hearings are this week. The Cannabis Coalition to lead the talks. And I just think the whole entire world is hopping on the cannabis train right now. And it is so exciting to be on board, isn't it, Roy? So, Cali Montana says, what's up with Reef, Jungle Boys, and Burner in Vegas? Some serious grows on YouTube. Yo. Yeah, there are some serious facilities in Vegas. It is really huge. Reef is right across the street from Planet 13, the biggest dispensary in the world, and Reef is monster too. Like you could buy max out at Planet 13, walk across the street, max out at like a fuck ton of pot. Yeah, Darlene, my girl, Weed Witch 420 says, the U.S. is slow to do anything, right? Yeah. Oh, the U.S. is going so slow, Darlene. Thanks for tapping in. And Cali Montana says, everybody needs to see this live. Yo, I appreciate you. Everybody tapping into this Weekday Wake and Bake. And I have one more story for you guys before we tap off today. Smoking some herb like we do at 8 a.m. Pacific time every weekday morning. So, this last piece of cannabis news comes from West Virginia. And this one woman, only named Haley in the article on mjmoment.com, one woman in Charleston, West Virginia, is really determined to decriminalize pot in her state. One woman, Haley. And she has so far collected 1,000 signatures herself to legalize pot. And so everybody's all curious as to what she's doing. You know, in her city alone, Charleston, West Virginia, 1,000 signatures already. So she says she estimates 49 of them signed her petition, which is amazing. Like, to hear coming from her, I mean, I can't imagine it's actually 49. That would be 98%. But, like, she probably knows. She probably has so many people and is turned down so rarely. But shout out this unbelievably motivated woman in Charleston, West Virginia. MJMoment.com reporting, did not include her last name. I think she opted out of that, but shout out Haley. 1,000 signatures to decriminalize pot in her state, and she claims 49 out of 50 people she asks sign it. There's only one I don't know. Old marijuana. Don't be smoking that, but fuck the stigma, legalize cannabis, and let's get motivated, Roll Gang. It's been a great can of news Thursday here on the Weekday Wake and Bake. We're almost to the weekend, Roll Gang, so super excited to see you guys tomorrow for Fuck Yeah Friday. I think I have an amazing guest decked lined up for the show. You guys know it's hard sometimes to show up early, but Rove's very own Journey coming onto the show tomorrow morning. The OG. She is a brand ambassador for one of the best cartridge brands in the industry and the products she represents. And of course, our favorite Quick Rips segment at the very end. Some rapid fire juicy questions. But every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, Roll Gang, the cannabis content will roll on, and so will we. We'll be rolling up some more. But hope you guys had a great wake and bake, got nice and blazed, and thank you to everybody tapping in. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You guys are all the shit.